And I think that's my cue, if I'm right.
Yes.
Welcome, everybody. Ian Chivers speaking. Delightful to be here, and hopefully we're going to have a lovely sort of discussion about native grasses and why they can be used. And and I started with Julie and I discussed this, and the first thing was really how. Well, first of all, why would I answering any questions about native grasses, and why would I know anything about horses? And I guess the first thing that I was able to tell Julie was that actually previously I was a horse owner. I don't have any now, but I did have 5 in work at one stage. I was a fortunate player of polo and polo cross and did a lot of work in that area. Great fun, loved it. But horses were a big part of my life for a long time. Now my life is dominated, of course, by grasses. And so it's a happy little conjunction to bring together the native grasses and the horse pasture. And this has been an area that's been very, very intriguing the way it's really developed over the last few years. And it seems to be more and more of an issue and more frequently asked in all sorts of forums. So when Julie and I first started, we said, well, let's just think about the 10 most frequently asked questions. And I thought, hey, that's a damn good start. But actually the way we worked it out was when we worked through this, it wasn't actually 10 questions. It was actually became really 14 questions. And so it was really these, I came up with 14 questions pretty simply. I could probably actually come up with more, but that was a starting point to work on that. So I'm just going to work my way through those and we'll see how we go. Hopefully there's something there of interest to everybody. And well, that's what the first question, I guess, the most obvious one is, why use native grasses? You know, what is it about them that makes them particularly good for horses, and what is it about them that makes them good for people to use in pastures? And so really in terms of the horses, the key ingredient here is that they are very low in non-structural carbohydrates, and that's just essential nowadays for horses that probably those horses that don't get the amount of work that they need, or and certainly those horses that particularly the smaller breeds, as I understand. But the non-structural carbohydrates are the problem, and the problems that are causing laminitis or insulin resistance and all the things like that, Cushing's disease. But so these grasses are sensational in the sense that they have very low levels, irrespective of the time of day, irrespective of their mowing height, irrespective of their fertility levels. So that they've got that non-structural carbohydrate levels that are down below sort of the 15th. They're very, very low. But added to that, of course, they've been in Australia for millions of years, and therefore they're adapted to droughts, to heat and all the rest of it. And once they're established, they don't need to be resown, as opposed to many of the introduced species. And that's, I guess, where I go now, is to say, the second question would be, why not the introduced grasses? You know, when they grow as big as this one, we've got the nice picture there, big, huge growth, why not use that? And really the answer is that they have very high non-structural carbohydrate levels, and that's sensational if you're a cow or a sheep, but not if you're a horse. The cattle and sheep with a rumen, there's quite a different digestive system to the horses, and they love high levels of sugar. That makes them get fat. But they're also, sadly, those grasses are not adapted to Australian soils. Oh, I see I've made a mistake. I didn't put the Y after the... They are not adapted to Australian soils, and they frequently die off after 1 or 2 years. Not particularly good for anybody. The third question is, what types would you use? Now, all of these photos, all of these pictures in that you're looking at here are all native species, and you can see they all look different. They've got, it's probably about in the photo there with the dog in it, there are at least 4 different grasses. So they're all shapes and colours and sizes. There's the one for the horses, that's actually a combination of 2 species there, and the other one in the top right is one only, that's wheatgrass. So what types do we use? And really the answer to that is you use the species that occurs naturally in your area. Now, South Australia has many different environments, and of course I was believing that most of the attendees were going to be South Australian, but actually looking through the list, there are people coming from everywhere. So I should really be saying here, Australia has many different environments. And what we know that is that generally the choice is going to include these things: wheat grasses, wallaby grass, spear grass, etc., etc. You can read it all there. Usually they're sown as a mixture. So if you're, say you're in Dubbo, in middle New South Wales, then you'd probably pick 2 or 3 of these grass, maybe 3 or 4 of them, which would be quite different to someone in Mount Gambier in South Australia, because the grass types, the environment is quite different. The grass type selection would be very different. Now, that's a mixture is usually the way to run. Single species things do run the risk of being just only one species and not enough robustness in the composition. So the mix that you choose would be the one that occurs naturally in your area. Now, there are some sweeping things we can suggest here that, you know, in southern Australia you're going to be better with wallaby grass, wheat grass, weeping rice grass, and possibly red grass and windmill grass. In northern Australia and further north into more tropical environments or subtropical environments, you start to include more kangaroo grass, warrego grass, and drop out some of the others. So the combinations will vary, but they will, I guess, usually work as a combination, and the key thing is to try and find those species that occur naturally in the area. We, of course, can help you with that. That's the sort of advice that we give many of our clients. 4th question, when do you sow? And I guess my reason for including these pictures here is that that's not the time to sow. If you're under drought, or you're in the middle of summer and it's looking pretty devilish, don't sow at that time. You're going to need water to get them established, irrespective of where you are. Now, these grasses, of course, have great drought tolerance once they're established, but not getting established. They need to be established with rainfall. So you sow at the time of least moisture stress. That, of course, is the rider here is that if you've got irrigation, you can sow virtually any time of year. And the key point here is that germination is dependent upon moisture within the soil. And that seed has got to be slightly buried below the surface so that it's enveloped in moisture, and that needs that moisture for an extended period. So it's not just for 2 days to get it started. It's for a longer time, and you're probably talking here about at least a month and a half of good moisture to get seedlings up and established well enough to actually get them growing. Now, question number 5, what ground preparation? Now, can you start, do you have to do the one on the left? Do you have to do something that's the massive ground cultivation effort like that, or can you get away with sowing direct into existing pasture like the top right-hand photo? Or alternatively, in the photo here with showing down the fence line, that pasture on the left is clearly degraded, it's overgrazed like fury. Could you just broadcast seed into that and get a result? And the simple answer is you could do all of those and you'll get a percentage of result. Clearly, the greater the preparation you put into it, the higher the percentage of result you will get. So if you do, like in the top left photo, you do the whole process of seedbed preparation, you will get the maximum percentage possible. If you go to the top right photo and just broadcast seed over that, you'll get a much lower percentage. And if you do something in the bottom left, the bottom right, you'll get a slightly higher than the one with all the competition, but it'll still be low. What you might need to do if your paddocks look like those at the bottom right, you'll need to do something to create a niche where the seed can fall in. So let's summarise that. Your preparation can be elaborate, or it can really, can be really thorough and can last for a year and a half or so, or you can be very brief, and your results will clearly vary strongly with the thoroughness with which you put it into it. And the key here is to create a condition where the seed can find a niche. So, whether that be simply dragging around a set of harrows or even an old gate or a bit of weld mesh or something like that, do something to disturb the surface so that the seed can actually find a bit of a place where it can rest and can get covered. And that can be either through full preparation, as I'm saying, that you can do the whole exercise. It might be the rotary hoeing, it could be the cultivation, it could be the sprays. I don't care one way or the other what you do. The more preparation you actually put in, the better the result will be. Now, the question often comes up is, how do I sow these grasses? Because they don't look and behave like everything else. Well, they feel like you go down to the local store and they'll send you a bag of seed that has been clipped and shaped to be perfectly easy to sow. Sadly, our grasses haven't had that length of preparation, and they are much more difficult to sow relative to the introduced species. Now, we've designed some equipment. The top right photo shows you that we've designed some equipment that gives a very good result with our seed. Now, that's ours for our own sowing purposes, but it's a case of saying, well, that's pretty elaborate equipment that we've built for our own purpose there. But strangely enough, even so, we still sow as much seed with the bucket on the left-hand side and the hands and just walking around. We sow as much seed by that method as we do by any other. The bottom photo there is a sort of it's a mulcher system, a hydromulcher type system, which will simply just pump out seed and, in that case, straw. And they put a sticker and it goes onto the banks. This is the method often used for roadways and roadsides and things like that, establishment where that people can't drive on it, it might be too steep, and they want to cover large areas quickly. Now you can put out a lot of seed by that method and it very effectively get coverage. But really the aim here is to not get hung up about the equipment. I know this disappoints a lot of the guys in the audience, because all the guys seem to get really very excited about different bits of equipment and say, well, want to resolve this. But really the aim is to get the seed out and get it onto the seed bed. Really don't get hung up by the equipment. Get the seed out somehow, and then even just simple broadcasting, and then drag some harrows over the seed afterwards will bury a lot of that, and that'll give you good germination conditions. Now, I think Julie and I were talking earlier, there's been a lot of queries about sowing methods and how to sow and the process of that, so maybe we'll be conducting another seminar about that later on at some other time. Another question is, why is the seed of native grasses, why is it so expensive? And these two photos are strategically chosen here, so let's look at them and I'll try and explain what happens here. They're both wallaby grass. Now, wallaby grass I've just chosen here because it's a species we deal with, and it's pretty widespread across most of southern Australia. And for those people that want to know, it probably occurs right up to Queensland border and maybe slightly into Queensland. Now, the photo on the left shows a paddock we're harvesting of a variety called Hume. Now that you will see in that photo, if you look closely, there are some white fluffy seed heads, and at the same time there are green immature seed heads. This is one of the issues with the native species, is that they don't have what's called synchronous maturity. So they're not all maturing at exactly the same time, and so the ripe ones, the white fluffy ones, they're all ready to harvest, but the bright green ones, the green ones, are still immature and not ready to harvest at all. So if I went in with a harvester and took all of that off today, or at the time of that photo, I would only get the proportion that are actually ripe at that time. The green ones won't do anything other than just gum up the harvester. So that's one reason. They're non-synchronous in maturity. The second thing is that and you look at the second photo there, this is also wallaby grass, and that white floor of on the ground there is actually all wallaby grass seed. And in this particular paddock, for one reason or other, we missed the harvest, and all the seed fell to the ground. And that's one of the other nasty habits of these grasses, is that they don't have what's called, they shatter. The seed shatters and falls to the ground. So non-shattering is the condition we really like. We don't have it within native species. It does occur within most of the introduced species. And so if we wanted to harvest all of that, we'd only get that proportion that actually still remain on the plant at that time. So for these two reasons, the non-synchronous harvesting and the shattering nature of the seed, the yields per hectare are much less than that of the introduced species, and that sort of goes to contribute to the reasons the seed's more expensive. So trying to put that into this form here, native grasses don't produce their seed in a convenient manner. That's really what it is, and that translates into as much seed per acre compared to the introduced grasses. And this all comes down to the process of domestication. And the native species we've only just started working with, whereas the introduced species have had hundreds of years of domestication, and that domestication has selected out types that do have all of those characteristics we're talking about of good seed retention and maturity at the one time, so which make them excellent for harvesting. All right. Next question, do I need to add lime? And I don't have a nice photo for this one, so I just left it blank, and the answer is pretty simple. No. These grasses really, across the board, are adapted to pre-existing conditions, and across Australia those conditions are usually acidic soils. There are some alkaline soils in Australia, but relatively rare. So whereas, and the contrast here is many of the introduced species come from Europe and North America and areas like that, which are, if anything, are going to be alkaline soils. So don't add lime. The people will be recommending to you to add lime to your soil if it's got a pH of anywhere between 4 and 5, or even 5 to 6. Still, people are still recommending adding lime. Save your money. Keep that for buying other things. What about fertilizer? This is also a question commonly asked, because once again, with the introduced species, it's pretty much de rigueur that you add fertilizer at the time. My response is really not at sowing. Don't put it on at that time. Then the reason is that the seeds themselves contain probably sufficient to keep them going for a little while, but maybe add some fertilizer after 2 months after the seedlings emerge. And my suggestion here is to usually use a low analysis organic fertilizer, though I'm not totally averse to using other types. So fertilizer, not such an important thing. Now, by the way, we fertilise our grasses in our production stands, our seed production stands. We fertilise them pretty heavily, and they love it. Now, these grasses are highly responsive to nitrogen, particularly, and will live very happily in high fertility soils. Sadly, the introduced species are probably more adept at the high fertility soils than and they will grow faster. So that's why we don't recommend sowing with fertilizer. Question number 10, how long should I leave it after sowing? And these two photos, I guess, try to show that that's the sort of condition you want to get to before you even think about putting the animals in. So you let them run up to seed, let that seed fall to the ground, and then after that you can go grazing. So allow the seedlings to grow up, produce seed, and then that seed will fall off. Usually that's going to be midsummer. Then you're grazing. And by the way, and I know I could talk about grazing forever, but grazing should always be rapid rotation. So an intense period of grazing followed by a long period of recovery. The success of these grasses is determined by that lasting a long period of recovery. The longer you can make that by having small paddock sizes and regular movement of your horses, the better off you're going to be. Can I make hay from native grasses? And here's a couple of cases where I think the answer is going to be pretty plain and simple. Yes, you can. If you choose taller, more leafy types. Now the two, and I'm going to go backwards in the pictures here. The one on the left-hand side is kangaroo grass. You can see it's a relatively tall one. The one on the right that's been cut and already made into hay, that's wheatgrass, and they make terrific hay. So get them early, treat them like a normal thing. Cut it when it's slightly green, cure it in the normal manner, and you'll get very good hay out of them. There are a number of other species that we use in our complete horse mixes, if you like, which are smaller and probably less suited to hay making. So if your focus is going to be around making hay, then choose species such as these. Question number 12, how long will it last? And the reason I put this photo in here is that stand is now about 15 years old and has not been oversown. And it's just, we use that as a production stand. It's grazed on a very regular basis, but that we have not seen death in that paddock. We've not seen. Indeed, I think we could almost name some of the plants because we deal with them so frequently. So that, by the way, is weeping grass for those interested, or weeping rice grass in some places. How long will it last? Really, if the grass is well established and given regular recovery from grazing, they'll live for many, many years. And then, maybe I'm being repetitive here, but it's usually overgrazing and or set stocking that are the factors that cut the life short. It's not going to be drought or fertility or heat. It'll be these factors: overgrazing and set stocking. They're the things that need to be managed appropriately so that you can get good results. And can I do this as an oversowing? Now, I would say you can. And this photo sort of gives some evidence of that. This is a photo taken, by the way, in the Adelaide Hills. That's oaky wheatgrass sown into a paddock that had been pretty well established with other grasses, and we gave it a very light spray. Not Roundup in this case, was just a spray with a knockdown, and just browned it off, and then we just got the wheatgrass growing within that. So it's done a really nice job of actually giving it advance head start, if you like, to the wheatgrass. After a little while, as the cooler conditions came along, the other grasses came up between the wheatgrass plants, and we ended up with a sort of a poly stand. But it can be achieved by sowing more than one grass. Wheatgrass we chose because it is vigorous, and that's the reason we're saying here is you can sow into an existing sward, but you will need to do something to knock back the existing grasses and provide an opportunity for the new grasses to get established. People do ask me the question, can I just graze it really heavily and just sort of punish the paddock enough that way and get something going? Yes, you can, but that doesn't do anything. Now, there are going to be plenty of plants that will actually live through that. You'll get a result, and I guess going back to the point I made earlier, you can do all sort of things on a continuum here, from the whole cultivation, rotary hoe, mulch crops, all of that's processed over 12 months up to 18 months, or you can do next to nothing, and that's the continuum of your sowing. And the further you go down to the greater treatment, the better your results will be from oversowing. If you simply just broadcast the seed straight over the top of a vigorous stand of other grasses and other weeds, then you will get a relatively few plants established. And it's just all the way thinking from that case of just broadcasting over the top of, with no work being done, right through to the whole exercise of doing it into a prepared seed bed. And you've got the continual results in the middle that go along that way. The more you can do to actually control the existing grasses and the existing weeds, the better off you will be. I'll come up to question number 14. I think I've gone through pretty quickly here. But anyway, how do I do this cheaply? Because the seed is expensive, how can I do this in a manner that's going to be relatively inexpensive. And this may be an odd drawing to actually picture to show this, but the point I'm getting at here is that these grasses are very good at recruiting to the next generation, and they will do that pretty quickly. In this particular photo, what you've got here is 2 rows of weeping grass that have been pretty well established, and in the middle, for some reason in the sowing equipment, that we didn't get anything established. What I did was come along with a rake and just cut the groove. And all that happened then was, just because I'd created a niche, the seed that was produced by those plants to the side of to either side here fell into that niche, and they then germinated and emerged. And what you could see if you look closely here is that there's nothing that's germinated between those rows, other than in the row that we actually cut out. So really, the answer to this, how do you do it cheaply? Then that's a very long answer to the question here. But you'd be doing small sections at a time. You'd be allowing the seed that you've sown to produce mature plants, and then they will set seed. They will spread. But importantly, what you have to do is actually do something to create some niches into which, in the soil next to the sown area, into which plants will actually establish. So with those, they're the sort of 14 questions that I thought of fairly quickly. But for those interested, we are making a special offer for listeners, tonight's listeners only, and it only occurs until the end of the day tomorrow. For some of the Yoki wheatgrass, we're going to sell that at something like a 26-27% discount to at $55 per kilo. And you can do that, but you need to write down that code there, HSA 14-4, because you can, if you're going onto our website to actually order that, you'll need to quote that. So contact for us. Indeed, you can place the order by calling the office or alternatively emailing office, or you can order directly through our website shop. But remember to get that code there, and I'll just flick back a page here so we get it again. It's HSA 14-4, and with that, and my thanks also to Julie. I think I can hear Julie is back online, and perfect.
Well, thank you very much, Ian.